Who is Michael Stallings? That's kind of a crazy question, truthfully, because I ain't just no ordinary person. I'm a superhuman. Dun dun dun. At one point, this wasn't a friggin' mess.
Howdy.
Hey, how are you?
Good, man.
I'm Mike Stallings. I'm also known as Moonshine Mike. I've been married 3 times. So that's kind of a neat little thing for y'all to know. First wife I was married to was 1 year, second wife 9 years, and current wife 10 years. And this is my final. 3 times and you're done. This is forever. She stuck with me. That's alright. I'm stuck with her too, and we love each other. I'm a musician. I've been known to be a still builder, so I make moonshine stills and every little thing that you could dream up to go along with distilling equipment. I try to dream it up or have somebody else dream it up, and I try to put that into play. I do chainsaw carvings too, and I carve signs, I make dream catchers, I make hemp jewelry, I do beadwork. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I was in the Army for 6 years. Some of my proudest years of my life, I'd say. Some of the fittest years of my life. I'd say I was probably the strongest in my entire life at that point. I'm a proud father of 2. My son Hendrix Briggs and my girl Madeline Carey. They're very creative and they're awesome kids. I'm a carpenter. I've been a carpenter for a lot of years. Probably started carpenter work in 1995 when I could do anything from framing to right up to finished carpentry. And I can pretty well do it all. Over the years, I've lived in tents, cars, vans, teepees. Sometimes I didn't even have a place to live. I just lived out of a backpack. Just had a tent and a tarp. I've been known to be a winemaker, horticulturist. I like my garden. I like grow my food, preserve my food. I'm a prior firefighter. I was a firefighter for 3-4 years, something like that. Helped out with the local volunteer fire department. I pride myself of being a good shot with a weapon. I've been a marksman since I was 6 years old. While I was in the military, I was even considered for the sniper section at one point. I am a tattoo artist. I've done a lot of tattoos on. I've got a lot of different stuff on me. I got stuff on my back, my chest. I mean, I could go all over my body and show you a bunch of crazy tattoos and stuff, but trying to make it any way possible. I didn't come from a rich family, so we pretty much did what you could to make it, and it's taken me a long time to finally settle in Kentucky and buy a farm and marry the right woman that I love, and really just settle into one spot that I could call home. I pride myself in being a person that is self-sufficient. Self-sufficient is a way of being that you can take care of yourself and your family and not worry that anybody else outside is going to influence what you're doing. And you can do it your way, the way that you'd like. Self-sufficiency, like, I pride myself in being a horticulturist, growing a garden that I can grow my food for my family. I can grow the food to eat and can and preserve and freeze and smoke and everything for the winter and for the upcoming seasons. And all part of that, being self-sufficient, being a carpenter, I can fix anything in my house. If I need to fix anything, over the years I've taught myself to be a carpenter. Over the years I've taught myself to be a good musician. I can be self-sufficient in that way, that, if I need money, I can go out and work. If you want to get past monetary to where I'm landscaping my own property, I'm mowing my own property, I don't hire people, I can't. I don't have the money to do something like that. You're taking care of yourself. And distilling is one part that you can take care of yourself. Because, for one, I'm using, as being self-sufficient, I don't buy store-bought yeast. I propagate my own yeast. So that's collecting yeast from the air and using that to distill your own wine, make your own bread, and distill your own spirits. And distilling plays a lot into being self-sufficient, just as much as being a chainsaw carver, working festivals that I'm making dream catchers and selling chainsaw carvings, or making signs, or selling merchandise for music, or something of the sort like that. But just like distillers of old time, they're gonna grow a crop and they're gonna propagate their yeast and they're gonna keep that alive. They'll use their own yeast, but they're gonna try to use what they've grown and preserve as much as you can. Preserving is freezing, drying, smoking, any of the sort. Because as of old time, people would bring their wares to market and they'd leave the hills and it'd take them a long time to get into town. And if they sold a bushel of corn for $2.50, that was incredible. I might say in old days they sold it for a quarter for a bushel. Who knows? But, in old days, it might be $3 for a gallon of liquor. So if you look at, you're looking at, you can sell your corn for all this, but what are you going to do if the market's down? Nobody needs corn at the time. Everybody had a good crop. You don't want nothing to go to waste. So you can take what you have grown in your garden, regardless if it's a cucumber, or if it's corn, or it's a tomato, you can distill it. So it's another way of preserving, for one, the product that you've grown. Two, it's a way of keeping it around. And three, it's a way of producing some kind of monetary, funding for your family that you can actually pay your bills. Feed your livestock stuff. I got into music at an early age, actually. My dad was a musician, so, going through the closets and everything like that, you'd always run into his guitars and he'd be like, "Don't touch those guitars!" And I didn't really appreciate how much they were at the time, but now I do, because their instruments are pretty expensive. And I started out as an early age as a musician, not playing, but appreciating. And I've always had kind of a heartbeat, and I think that heartbeat's pretty universal with every living thing. So my dad was a musician, and I can't tell you a lot about the Stallings side of my family, but as far as I've heard from others in my family, that they're all pretty much musicians. So music is carried through on that side of my family, and I think art is carried through on my mom's side of the family. So around, I'd say 1993, I picked up a guitar for my first time. It might have been 1992, but I didn't really get into it to probably 94, 95. And I taught myself to play guitar starting on the bass string, the E string. I'd learn how to play songs on one string. And then as soon as I knew everything on one string, I'd add another string. So then I'd play on two strings. And I'd learn on a third string. So it took me quite a while, but I think now I'm pretty proficient with the guitar. And over time I've added, fiddle, bass, mandolin, just lots of different instruments. I can play pretty much any percussion besides the drum set you stick in front of me.
Langhorn Liquor Pickers is host of the Moonshiners Ball.
Yeah, put on airplane mode. Hell yeah, man, looks great out here.
Bam! Howdy.
Hey, how are you?
Doing good, man. Happy to be here.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, brother. Hell yeah, man, this is great. Man. I've been here.
We're gonna play music at the Fitchburg Furnace.
Okay, let's do it. You got any lunch left over?
Yeah.
Well, here we are, coming from Fitchburg Furnace. This is Mr. Joel Sordinas, and this is Mr. Michael Stallings. We're going to play a little song for you. It's called Life of Luxury. This song's a little story about my travels around the United States and kind of settling into Kentucky. My tent, discovered there were snowflakes all around. Even though it looks so pretty, pretty and don't like me, and all my world is laying on the ground. And every day I have my hand out and prayed up to the clouds, find myself a warm place to stay. Every day I have my hand out, pray up to the cloud, find myself a warm fed me mushroom, hippies fed me dope. Shiners, they spun my head around. Every day is an adventure, forward, never back. Carrying my life around in a gunny sack. And every day I held my hand out, prayed up to the cow, find myself a warm place to stay. And every day I held my hand out, prayed up to the cow, find myself a warm place to stay. One day I found a dollar made me rich. Never had to want for things again. I built myself a castle with a river and a moat. Float around my kingdom in a boat. Every day I held my hand out, prayed up to the cow, find myself a warm place to stay. That dollar I discovered, I won the lottery. Share it now with you and also me.
I got involved in moonshine because my family all made wine. We're all winemakers pretty much. My great-grand, my granny, my mom, my grandpa, they all had their own little secret stashes pretty much, it seemed like. And I'd always been interested in distilling and always been interested in just the whole science of it and the whole folklore of it and the whole, just everything about it kind of intrigued me, just the thought of somebody sitting around in the woods in the middle of the night, with the campfire and making some crazy brew and feeding it to all their friends, making them happy and stuff. And it's just kind of this neat old folklore kind of thing of it. And I'd always been interested in it. And, cartoon strips, they always kind of amp things up. And, growing up, I think it was Snuffy, the little moonshine man ran around with the big hat and overalls and the corncob pipe and everything. And that always kind of stoked me, made me happy about, somewhere, possibly there's some guy sitting in the woods having a good old time. And, but what got me started in moonshine was I met a guy that, he saw I was kind of in a difficult way and offered me work. And I took him up on the work. And it was in construction work. It was just carpentry work, hewing stones and, building a cabin. And met a few locals. And then as time went on, of me talking and hanging out with this guy, I found out he was a moonshiner and that he made moonshine. And one day in the winter, he brought me out to his moonshine still, and I got to experience my first like dip my finger in mash and, you know, get to check out a still and get a, you know, taste the water that's feeding into it and everything. It's just really neat.
Whiskey before breakfast.
I don't think I have really a specialty. I like to try everything. I mean, I like corn liquor, I like rye liquor. When I first learned to make liquor, my first experience in making moonshine was making brandy. So it was old time hard pears and rye grain is what we worked off. Over time, I've, you know, learned working with rye has more of a spice, and more of a barley brings more of a sweet, and the wheats kind of smooth things out, and you can kind of use the wheats and barleys kind of swapped out, and white corn produces a flavor and yellow corn produces a flavor, and you know, a malted barley might be different than a pearled barley, and you know, there's different things, but I like to play around with a lot of different things. And when I'm distilling, I don't say anything's my specialty because you can distill anything. Moonshine's a high risk. I want to say it's a high risk job, if you want to look at it as a job. There's a lot of things that can go wrong and will go wrong with an adventure, and this adventure I'm gonna tell you about is kind of wild because I put a whole lot of thought into making the mash that I had been making, so I had to maintain the temperature on the mash really close, and I was real particular on the temperature of it, and I was real particular on the yeast, and I was real particular about who was going to be around that day, and I locked the gate, and I was real particular on the time I ran the liquor for that day, and the mash was perfect. Macerated ginger was just perfect. I made some extra gear. I made me a really nice parrot for my still. Parrot's something that you can drop a hydrometer down into, and it basically feeds the liquor into it and bobs that hydrometer that tells you what proof it is. You kind of bobs it there and you can tell what proof it is. And then I built a tray out from it to put quartz crystals on. So then the liquor would run out of the parrot and run into this tray that was full of quartz crystals. And the liquor would run through and over those quartz crystals and then to a collection device. But before it did, like the liquor run over the quartz crystals, and then it ran over ginger root that I had in a funnel that got collected after that. So altogether, I probably had a month and a half of work just into this one run of liquor. And I had the gates closed and everything that evening, and I'd already lit the pot, and everything was running nice and smooth as far as it heating up. I didn't have no leaks. It was going over into the doubler, and I was starting to hear it bubbling. You know, you're hearing that thump, 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 and I'm like, all right, cool, it's moving. The run was going just fine. And I was checking all the steam, and I was checking all the fire, and I was checking everything that was going on. And then I heard somebody start beeping outside the gate. And I thought, well, who in the world is outside the gate? We were hanging out and talking. He's a fellow musician, and he was sharing some material with me, and we went over into the copper shop. And we went over in the copper shop, and we sat down and we started listening to music, and we were smiling, and you know, we had a few sips of liquor, and I had some homemade bourbon sitting around and was sharing that. And it was starting to get dark outside, and we were listening to music, and I looked over my right shoulder, and there's 2 4-foot windows that was to my right. I looked out the window, and first thing I saw was 3 state police, then a sheriff behind it, a search and rescue team behind that. And they were lined up all the way down the road. And I'm running liquor. No less with somebody that is pretty popular as a public figure and as a musician. Period, I was running liquor that had taken me a month and a half to try to run and make it perfect. They were parked in front of my house. And apparently there was some guy that was lost up the holler from me that had ran away and was hiding in the woods and had talked about suicide or something to his granny. So she'd called the police, called 911. Well, they sent everybody up in here to look in the woods and send the dogs and everything to look for this kid that was lost. The kid was over 18 years old, but they sent everybody. And just about the quietest point that we all knew that all them first responders was right in the front yard was the exact time that his wife walked out on the front porch and said, "Where's that moonshine?" It's just one little reminder that making tax-free illicit spirits, moonshine, can be very illegal, and you can get in some very big trouble. I'm not regulated as much as a larger distillery, but as being a master distiller, I have to know different things that people don't know. And from step 1, knowing just my yeast propagation, taking that yeast sample that I made and collected from my farm, to making up my mash. So I'm gonna build my mash bill, and that's up to me. Whatever I'm gonna make that mash bill out of, I'm gonna make that mash bill. And I'm gonna use that propagated yeast that I did, and I'm gonna add that into my mash, and then that mash is gonna work for 7 to 14 days. And I'm gonna throw that in my still. Well, it's gonna be me that's gonna sit there with that fire. I'm not no big giant distillery that can bunch of gauges and everything like that. I'm basically gonna pitch fire into this thing, light a fire underneath the still, and I'm gonna be sitting here with a pile of wood over here, and I'm gonna be feeding that fire, and I'm gonna be the one that knows that I've heated it up to the point, that it needs to be at, just by kind of feeling with my hand as the run goes along, knowing where the steam is. And a larger distiller, you could look at gauges and be like, "Oh, okay, well, I got gauges," But with a still like this, you'd have to use your hands and just kind of feel where the steam is. And as it goes along, you got to know that you're heating it up enough to actually push the steam over. You got to watch for leaks. You got to make sure that you're monitoring for leaks and you're patching those leaks as it's going along. Run your doubler wet, but you can't have that thing. Somebody will say it's a 5-gallon capacity and you think that you can fill it up to 5 gallons. That's not the truth. You need to put that much in the bottom of it, because as all that builds up, an unexperienced person would think that it would just stay at that level and it would just go on through, but there is reflux inside the doubler, so it's gonna build up with fluid, and every once in a while you gotta take a little bit off of it. And a lot of people wouldn't think about that, but you gotta know that as a master distiller. And with your your condenser, a lot of people wouldn't think, okay, well, it needs to stay at a certain temperature. It does need to stay cool. You need to keep that condenser cold as much as possible. And Some people think that you can just fire it up. You know, an amateur would just think you can fire it up and then it would just be good. You know, it's just going to stay cold forever because it's full of water. No, there's hot steam rolling into it. So it's going to start at the top and start working down real quick. And if you don't monitor your water flow going in and out of your condenser, then it's going to get too hot. And then you're just going to be blowing steam out your condenser. Just steam blowing out your worm. And the more steam you got building up and building up and building up, the closer it is to that fire, the closer you are to run through the woods with your pants on fire. The cuts is the next thing that you even got to go through. And when you do the cuts on the liquor, you need to know what your foreshots, your heads, your mids, and your tails are going to be, because there's 4 cuts. And a lot of people would think there's only 3, but there's truthfully 1 extra that you need to watch for, because there's a lot of ethanols and methanols that are on the front of your run, and you don't need that in there. And it takes away from that sweetness, and it takes away from the smell, and it just gives it kind of a yeah. But you need to know where your cuts are, and you need to how to harvest that, and you need to know what to do with those cuts. So, and from there, you need to be able to know how to proof it down. Yeah, these are all things that industrial distilleries have all these different people doing. And when you're on a small scale, you got to know how to do all that. So, who's to say if small distilleries in the forest, or small distilleries in your garage, or small distilleries in your kitchen is worse off for you than what is going on in an industrial distillery? Because you got so many people pitched into the pot in a large distillery, and truthfully, they're qualified for the job, but how long have they actually been doing it? I've been doing it a long time, and I gotta do it all. When you're fermenting something, you can make a mash and fill this quart up with that mash, and put a piece of cheesecloth over the top of it and tie that, and then set that down underneath the fruit tree, and probably do a couple jars of it, because you might only get 1 or 2 samples that'll actually live and start bubbling. So then you got a yeast sample here, and just the same as anybody that would make like a sourdough bread, you'd get your starter, and then you'd put it in the fridge to keep it, good. And you can keep making that starter from that starter, but it's not going to go bad. Now, if you was to leave that yeast sample for your sourdough out on the counter, it would just swell up and turn bad. Same thing goes for, like, if I was to take this would be an open fermentation. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to pour this into a mash barrel that has the mash prepared already, ready for the yeast. So it's basically, this is a small version of the big version for a 50-gallon barrel. And I take this sample and I pour that into that barrel, and then that's going to start fermenting. And if I do a closed fermentation, then it's not introduced to oxygen. It'll only have oxygen exposure for that short period of time. And then it's closed off and you put an airlock on it. But if I was to leave it with the airlock off, then I would be limited to the period of time that I could use this. Because if I was going to make it into moonshine or wine and had it as a open fermenter, open fermentations, you run into the trouble of, like, the old time fermenters. A lot of old people who did it the traditional style of putting stuff in and covering it with like a cheesecloth or something, letting it open ferment, like an old mead or something like that. Letting it open ferment. As soon as that fermentation's done, you got to distill it right then, or you got to close it off and bottle it right then. If you got an airlock on it, it preserves that. It gives you more time to work with it.
I got you.
If it's an open fermentation, then just like a barrel that doesn't have an airlock on it, if you don't have an airlock on it, then it's going to be exposed to oxygen as soon as that cap drops. You're protected when the cap's up on your barrel because it has like a barrier with your grain and everything, and it's pushing carbon dioxide out, and it's kind of protecting itself. But as soon as that cap drops and the fermentation stops, well, then everything's exposed to that oxygen. And then shortly, if you don't distill it within that short period of time, then it'll slowly start turning to vinegar.
So I'm gonna play a little song for you. It's a song I wrote for my wife. It was written sitting out on the porch one day. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna write my wife a song. This song is called Rainy Day in Love. Rain is falling inside my window, and I'm hoping for a miracle.
music kind of is an organic thing to me because it's always been there. It's always been a heartbeat that influenced me. It didn't matter if I was at home, or if I was traveling, or if I was in a bad mood, or if I was a good mood, or if I was, living in a tent, living in a car, living in a house. If I had a job, if I didn't have a job, music was always there. And music has always been an influencer for me. It's always been kind of wrapped up around everything that I do. And I think pretty much everybody knows that you can kind of dip into music and you can get to where you need to be. It doesn't matter if you've had a bad day. You can listen to the radio going home and probably smooth out your head before you get back home. I've had a bad day at work. Then you hear that song on the radio and you're like, I love this song. My day sucked, but this song made it better. So music's kind of always been there. There's a heartbeat that goes around everything and kind of ties everything together. And I've always been kind of pushed that way to let music influence me. When a lot of other people, haven't grown up around it or haven't really let it in a way. But when you think about music in general, everybody is inspired by music, depending on whatever type of music you like. Everybody likes it. And I think it's just because it has a heartbeat. We got a heartbeat. The earth has a heartbeat. We got, an ocean that ebbs and flows. I mean, who says the moon and the stars and the sun ain't got a heartbeat? They're all in some kind of weird little, organic twist around everything as much as everything that goes on in your life. So I'd say music is a good influencer that way. If I was going to tell you something important about moonshine, something heartfelt that you need to know, is be careful. It is very serious. A lot of people think it is a game. It's not a game. It's nothing to mess around with. I mean, just one mistake can blow your house up. There's a lot of pressure built up there. And you hear about really large distilleries that people have had in large cities. Like, think about Prohibition. These people ain't telling everybody what they're doing. They're running as much as they can run, as fast as they can run. Well, it's not all about that. I mean, you can go small scale, but do it right. Make sure you're not using like chicken feed do it right. Use copper. Do it properly. I mean, if you got to buy store-bought grain, if you got to buy 1 million books, just to educate yourself, please educate yourself. It's just plain and simple that you need to be careful. It's very serious and it needs to be taken very seriously. Not light-hearted at all about that at all. I've seen some pretty crazy stuff. I've got a friend that burnt every bit of his front, and I can show you my hand right here. I roasted my whole hand. You can see my hand. All my fingers up here, all my fingers here, all the way around. You can see it on my thumb. There's discoloration all the way around my hand here. It went all the way around here. It was like a big pocket. I could lift the skin up. You'll get boiled by steam. You'll get burnt by the pipes. You'll get burnt by the flame. You're dealing with open alcohol. When it comes out of the pipe, you're dealing with open alcohol. So you're dealing with alcohol vapor. If you get a leak, you've got flammable liquid that's coming out. You've got an open flame. So these are all things to take into consideration. So this is very dangerous to do, so you need to research. Do as much research as you can. Me, during the time that I've learned, I've got a pile of books. I've taken winemaking very seriously in my life, just for the simple reason of my family's made wine for a lot of years. And I've moved that into study of beer making, study of different distilling techniques, if it be from corn, just plain corn recipes, to gin, to any other, lots of different things. But if I was gonna let you know something that you need to really know about moonshine, is to do it right and be very, very careful. Don't believe everybody. Pick and choose who you're talking to. Everybody's got a different point of view of everything. So you need to pick and choose who you're talking to about these things, because it is very, very dangerous. I got into still building because it is a really fun art. I'm a distiller, so I'd like good equipment. And most of the time when you're a distiller, you can't, especially a home distiller, you can't afford everything that's on the market. Everything that you want, you really can't afford. And so if you can learn how to make it yourself, then you can help yourself and you can help others. Me having my copper shop down here, it has really taken me back to the fundamentals of understanding how my still works. Because to build a still, you got to understand every little detail about how that still works. And so I kind of took it up as an art form, and self-betterment, trying to help myself understand distilling better, and help myself to be able to provide better equipment. Now, over the years, I've educated myself that I'm pretty well self-reliant now. If I need a thumper, if I got copper, I can just go ahead and build it. If my friend needs a bucket, I can go build it. If you need a cup, I'll build it. I'm pretty well willing to try anything. And if you've got an idea, I'm willing to try it. Everything I got right now that I'm doing is all small scale. It's nothing humongous. I wouldn't take on a 100-gallon still right now if I wanted to, just because I can't afford the liability of it. And at the same time, I've never built a 100-gallon still. I've always done 15-gallon, 20-gallon, 30-gallon, 5-gallon, 10-gallon. It's always been a smaller size that is manageable for your house, and something that you can make a product that be happy. In the times of that, like the times that we're in right now, by educating myself, I feel confident that I could build a still out of multiple things, and know that by distilling, I can provide for my family. And I'm not just talking about distilling alcohol. I'm talking about taking muddy water from a creek, running it through your still, and having it come out clean on the other end. If you can't get water, drinking water, it's a basic necessity you need. So by educating myself and knowing that I can do this, I can take care of my family, and I can take care of other families too. So if I can provide you with a service that'll help you, I'm willing to teach you. But if you just want to learn distilling, I'd be glad to learn anybody on how to run water, clear water. If you want to learn to educate about distilling alcohol, I'd be glad to teach you that too. But just, I've got kind of a way about myself that I don't really try to depend on nobody. And I think that's kind of a way of a moonshiner, is to be off the beaten path. The way of a moonshiner is to not be recognized. You don't want to stand out. You want to be self-reliant. And with the way that I've tried to work with my copper. You know, this is functional art. I'm educating myself as well as helping people out. I'm educating myself and helping my family out at the same time. So if I can carry on a tradition and be self-reliant and just pretty much take care of myself off my own farm, then that's what I'd like to do. You never think this is back here. That's self-preservation. At one point, this wasn't a friggin' mess. It actually, I said at one point, this wasn't a friggin' mess. But there's still back here. I got my extension cord. You can tell it just got. Can you turn your light on your phone?
Yeah.
But I'd have my 50-gallon still, and then 2 doublers here, and then my condenser right here. I'd run my water in through the over here, plugged in right there. I ran drainage out the back over there. I had it all stashed back in here. We had lights and everything. Everything started leaking, and the floor gave away and everything, so I just quit using it. But yeah, this is an old still site.
That's awesome.
And you would never think it was back here. I used to use it all the time. I haven't used it in probably half a year now. Actually, just thought about it. I was like, you might want to see this.
Cool.
Yeah, man, I've got all my stuff for my hydrometers, pipe wrenches, my scoopers, hoses. I kept that full of water and kept propane tanks in it to keep them from freezing up. And I could switch them out real quick and didn't have to worry about my pot imploding. I had these lights and had that light. That always helped. Had me a little DVD player so I could sit here and watch DVDs. I'd sit over here and watch the pot and the doubler and everything. Sit here and watch movies. Go over there and check it every once in a while. My copper work is a challenge. All the artwork I do, I got a large variety of artwork I do, from dream catchers to jewelry to, landscaping, horticulture, to a lot of different things. And when it comes down to this art form, this is something completely different, and it tickles a different part of your brain. I can look at a tree and be like, I can get a face out of this. I can look at, something out in the woods and be like, okay, I can carve a mushroom out of this. I can look at a canvas and say, I can paint a landscape on this. There's lots of different things, but one of the most challenging parts of copper work is, for one, you got to learn all these weird dimensions. And like, if I'm gonna make a 15-gallon pot still, then I need to figure out how round I need to make it, how round I need to make the base. I need to know how tall I need to make the cape, how tall I need to make the collar. If I want to drain, if I don't want to drain, I need to know. There's certain things about how you build things that will challenge you. And the more you do it, the more you learn about it. And you can kind of control what that still does to a point. After that, it's human function. If you burn the fire too fast, yeah, you could scorch your mash, or you could, push the cap off, or you might be running it hot enough that you're just running basically water and not even getting much alcohol at all. So a big challenging part of working with copper is, for one, you got to figure out all these dimensions and everything. And it's not easy to make these decisions because you have to be precise. Because if you don't have money, copper's expensive. All the fittings are expensive, all the pipes are expensive, all the silver rods and silver solder is very expensive. The copper sheeting's expensive. I mean, everything about it is expensive. And if you mess up and make a bad mistake, wood, I can go, all right, I'll go chop another piece out here in the woods. It's free. I just got to walk out in the woods. If I mess my blade up, so what? I'll resharpen it. If I got to replace it, it's $20 down here at the hardware store. I'm not cutting a piece of metal that, could be $120 in one cut and go, oh. So, one of the biggest challenges of copper is it is expensive. But it's just educating yourself on doing it properly and getting the size that you want, the dimension that you want, and that it functions the way that you want it to function.
One of my favorite things in life is creating. Just period creating. There's so many things that you can create and so many things that you can make that is going to live on forever. You're going to be remembered for what you do for others more than what you do for yourself. So, moonshining, just for the simple fact of, you're a real big part of it from the get-go. Right from the very start of it, it's going to be you into it. It's some piece of you that you're passing out to others. I can take a piece of wood and look at it, and what other people might not see in a piece of wood, I will. And I might be able to carve it out, and hand it to somebody. And that's a piece of me that I'm giving to them. And it's kind of the way I look at it, and why I want to be the best at what I do. At least good at it. Because I am sharing a piece of me with another person. And I'd like to be remembered when I'm older. I'd like to be remembered when I'm gone. I'd like to be 100 years from now and somebody go, man, Moonshine Mike carved that. Moonshine Mike wrote that song. Mike Stallings wrote this. He done that. It's something that it's taken me a long, long time to learn and a long, long time to build my confidence in. And I'm still doing that to this day. But anything that you can help others out with and put your whole heart into and share it with somebody and have them appreciate it as much as you, it's worth doing.